Mr. Patrick Tay.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of both bills. The Retirement and Re-employment Amendment Bill seeks to raise the retirement age and re-employment ages in Singapore to 65 years and 70 years, respectively, by 2030. The first move is to commence from 1st July 2022, increasing the retirement and re-employment ages to 63 and 68, respectively. The Retirement and Re-employment Act came into force in 2012 because of three main factors, namely a longer life expectancy of the current population, a tightening labour market with a shrinking citizen population, and the need for talent management and retention. Today, the above-mentioned needs continue to exist and underscore the importance of the Act. Although COVID-19 has challenged the labour market, the tripartite partners agree that the important work to enable older employees to continue working if they are able and willing to do so must continue. While I'm heartened that the tripartite partners remain committed to supporting the re-employment of older workers, I'm concerned of more companies not re-employing existing older workers in view of the uneven and uncertain outlook. I know of some companies who have resorted to making payouts under the Employment Assistance Payment, EAP for short, as an easy and cost-efficient way of circumventing their re-employment obligations. Indeed, this situation is in some way exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. As the life expectancy of individuals increase over the years, together with the mounting pressures on the sandwich generation, it is crucial that we ensure that all older workers who are keen and able to work can continue to do so with reasonable adjustments to their re-employment terms. Accordingly, the EAP should not be used as an easy way out to avoid re-employing older workers. Instead, it should only be offered after a tariff review as a last resort if the employer cannot find any internal vacancy. To that end, I would like to raise 6 suggestions for consideration. First, with the increase in median wages and the cost of living in Singapore, it is submitted that the existing one-off payment equivalent to 3.5 months of salary, subject to a minimum of $5,500 and maximum of $13,000, needs to be reviewed and increased. If there is a sizable increase in the minimum and maximum EAP payable, this might serve to deter companies from cursorily reviewing internal vacancies with a view to letting go of older workers. Companies may have a greater incentive to find suitable internal vacancies for older workers to work at and be paid for. If push comes to shove, and employers genuinely have no other options but to let go of older workers, at least the increased EAP amount would serve to tide them through a longer period of unemployment. We need to ensure that the EAP sum provided is sufficient. We do not want our older workers to be living from hand to mouth. I therefore submit that the tripartite partners continue to work at and review the mutually agreed increment in both the minimum and maximum EAP sums to cater to the increased median wages, changing employment landscape, and increased cost of living in Singapore. Second, additional tiers of unemployment income support for PMEs who are involuntarily unemployed. The findings of the NTUC SNEF PME Task Force report show that mature PMEs are particularly precarious when retrenched during the current downturn due to higher costs of living as they provide for both older and younger dependents, longer time periods taken to find a new job in view of their age and lack of relevant skill sets, and increased propensity to suffer from wage loss on re-entry to employment. PME shared that an unemployment income support could provide some breathing space for them to retrain, upgrade their skills, and look for suitable employment while helping to alleviate their anxieties and ensure that those who are unaware of avenues of help do not fall through the cracks. I therefore suggest that the government consider and unemployment income support, coupled with active labour market policies for all workers, including mature PMEs, who are involuntarily unemployed, and for the tripartite partners to study carefully this in greater detail. Third, the PME Task Force report also found that despite being active in their job search and undergoing training, mature PMEs who were retrenched had difficulties in securing a job. To assist mature PMEs, the government could consider providing a short-term salary support. Example, up to 50% salary funding capped at $3,800 per month for 6 months for companies who hire mature PMEs who are unemployed to lower the cost and risk for companies to hire this group of PMEs with relevant skills. If a new company takes on another company's re-employment obligations, the short-term salary support from the government would be particularly useful in easing its re-employment obligations with respect to the mature worker transferred. Fourth, while the current framework provides flexibility in job negotiations for re-employed employees, we need to safeguard against companies' exploitations of such flexibilities. Bearing in mind that older workers have performed satisfactorily and been employed in their role over the years, we could require employers to justify in writing, inter alia, any material changes in the re-employment terms of older workers and/or sudden lack of internal vacancies for that said role when these employees have been employed in the role over the years. This is to avoid a situation whereby companies unilaterally offer significant pay cuts or reduction of employment benefits to the mature worker under the guise of having renegotiated the employment terms with the mature worker while expecting the same standards and deliverables for the mature worker. Further, with the requirement for written justifications of material changes to employment terms or sudden lack of internal vacancies, the company bears the burden of justifying that such changes are reasonable. The company cannot simply state that the employee rejected its reasonable re-employment offer as a basis for not paying EAP. Fifth, even as we embrace digital transformation, we urge employers to continue training and upgrading older staff to acquire the necessary skills to minimize the digital and tech inequality, where there are incentives and support schemes to tap on these support schemes and send older workers for training and skills upgrading. Lastly, through the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen many changes in the work environment. Just to name a few, businesses have pivoted to online platforms, employees have been working from home, and international conferences are held online. These non-exhaustive lists of examples show us collectively that Singaporeans are agile enough to adapt to various changes and curveballs that the pandemic has thrown at us. As Singapore marches towards the next normal, I would like to encourage employers to consider how various jobs can be redesigned and re-examined to allow for older workers to continue working. In so doing, companies may consider the relevant skill sets the employees have and their experiences gleaned over the years to match any needs that the business may have. For instance, if a person was employed in a marketing role, a job redesign could involve not just marketing work to external parties, but possibly internal communications, usage of digital platforms and social media, and/or pitching of ideas to senior management. Crucially, older workers may also take on the role of mentoring younger employees. I would like to call employers not to view older workers as slow, backward, or expensive to hire. Instead, I urge employers to adopt a change in mindset. There's a Chinese saying, 家有一老，如有一宝. This is loosely translated to mean that having an elder at home can be likened to having a treasure at home. I believe this is also applicable in the work context as well. Older employees have amassed a wealth of experience over the years in their specialized areas of work, and it would be our loss if we do not tap on this treasure while still available. There is something about decades of work experience, tenacity, soft skills, and accumulated knowledge that cannot be quantified, much less deemed as irrelevant for the purposes of re-employment. Mr. Speaker, the Central Provident Fund Bill is put before us 4 amendments with the key objectives of making it easier for members to receive retirement payouts, making it easier for members to build up their retirement nest egg, and to streamline the CPF system. These are all laudable objectives consistent with the overarching mission of the CPF, which is to enable Singaporeans to have a secure retirement through lifelong income, healthcare financing, and home financing. While I'm fully supportive of the amendments, I have the following questions from an employment perspective for the Minister. The Contribute As You Earn scheme, the CAYE scheme for short, helps self-employed persons, SEPs for short, contribute to their Medisave as they earn. Under the CAYE scheme, government agencies will deduct and transmit a portion of payment due to SEPs into their respective Medisave accounts for convenience. At present, the CAYE scheme is only applicable to public sector contracts. First, I understand that take-up of the CAYE in the public sector is very encouraging. In view of that, will the CAYE scheme be expanded to include the private sector? And if so, does MOM foresee any resistance from the private sector? How else may the CAYE scheme be expanded to help freelancers? If expanded, it would help more freelancers, particularly those who render services to companies in the private sector, keep up with their Medisave contributions, and provide greater financial protection against health issues. Second, under the CAYE scheme for government projects, the government essentially deducts a portion of monies due to the SEPs and transmits it to the SEPs' Medisave accounts. As this House would know, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a decimating effect on the lives and livelihoods of SEPs. While the circuit breaker measures that were implemented last year, together with the existing restrictions on social gathering, the events and performing arts sector has almost come to a standstill. Their current earnings are far cry from their earnings prior to the pandemic. In view of the above, would there be possible circumstances in which SEPs can opt out of the CAYE scheme as they may need the monies to tide through this rough patch? If so, what are some examples of such circumstances? Third, in the context of employment relationships, both the employers and employees make CPF contributions. Even as the distinction between SEPs and employees is increasingly blurred, with some countries recognizing SEPs as workers, perhaps service buyers could be required to make CPF contributions for SEPs too. To be clear, the existing CAYE scheme applicable to the public sector only requires the government to take a portion of the fees belonging to the SEP to be credited to the SEP's Medisave account. What I'm proposing is one step further, that the service buyers from both public and private sector make additional contributions to the SEP's CPF account, which mirrors the employer's CPF contributions under normal employment relationships. If accepted, this would mean that practically service buyers would be making CPF contributions consisting of both SEP's portion under the existing CAYE scheme, as well as additional sums being the service buyer's contributions too. Sir, notwithstanding my clarifications and suggestions, I stand in support of both bills.